Cimo! Hi.
Guess who's back?
Back again. But I have brought you back for your unique expertise. See,
That's a way to put it.
You've been really good, honestly, at identifying like cards that got banned and things like that in Magic history. Like, you are a tough nut to crack, but I also know that you have a lot of experience from Yu-Gi-Oh! In the art of the restricted card.
Correct.
All right. And there are some formats in Magic that restricted cards. And going back to the very early days of Magic the Gathering, there was a restricted list. In fact, the format began not with a ban list, but with a restricted list. So we are going back to the very first restricted list ever created for Magic the Gathering. And you're going to try to figure out if the cards I show you are on that list or not. Very simple.
Ooh, this is going to be tough.
Very simple.
This is going to be tough.
First ever restricted list for a TCG was this card that I show you, restricted. So you're happy. You're happy, right? There's no money involved.
Yeah, sure.
You don't have to guess any prices.
I don't have to guess any prices. But we'll see. So what I've learned is that there's a really big difference, because you and I have done some of these. Raren and I have done some of these. You know, we all, the whole card game Avengers group at this point, we've been doing stuff like this. When you add restricted/limited into the mix for these videos, it gets a lot harder. It gets a lot harder. So this will probably be the toughest video yet. I'm excited though. Let's see what you got.
All right. I'm just letting you know. The time is 1994.
Excellent. I may not have been born yet. Fantastic.
January of 1994. And I don't even know what they were doing with Magic at the time, but only the original set was out and the new expansion Arabian Nights had come out. All right?
Okay.
So there were a handful of cards banned, but it was because they literally did weird things to the game. Anti-cards. Are you familiar with the concept of anti-cards from Magic?
I am not. I'm not familiar.
Oh, look, I'll just tell you. Magic was originally designed to be played for ante, which means that you pull a random card from your deck, flip it face up before each game. Winner gets the card. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yep. Winner gets both cards. So that was quickly banned. Those were part of the original ban list. Along with
you might find this interesting. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, part of the rules in the anime was that both players put up the rarest card in their deck, and whoever won got, both cards at the end of it. So I'm familiar with it in that sense, but I didn't know Magic actually did that. That's insane.
I think Magic had a literal term for that. It was something like God, what was it? There was an actual term for like anteing your rarest card.
Really?
Yeah, really? I think it was no
super
net ante. Yeah, super ante. Sure, I think people did that with Magic back in the day. Nowadays, very frowned upon, not part of the game, and all the cards that reference your ante card are banned, and they were banned at the beginning of this in January of 1994. The concept of formats barely exists as a term. There's literally just the Magic cards that exist. And when this was formed, the Power 9 were restricted.
Okay.
Let's get that out of the way. I'm not showing you the Power 9. And then a handful of other cards got restricted. Some of them I'll be showing you, but there'll also be some there to fool you. So are you ready?
Of course. Let's do it.
We're going to kick it right off with an absolutely hot one.
As long as I don't have to guess the price of the cards, I'm good. I'm ready. Demonic Tutor. This seems familiar. I don't know if you've showed me this before.
I have shown you this one.
You have? I was about to say. Okay. All right.
We're going to start you out in a comfort zone.
1 in a black. You may search your library for one card and take it into your hand. Reshuffle your library afterwards. Interesting. It's funny because with Yu-Gi-Oh! In the first couple sets, similar to this, because this is Arabian Nights was one of the first sets for Magic. We also had tutors like very early on as well. Now, I will say there is there may be only like a couple cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh's history that let you take any card from your deck and add it to your hand. There's plenty of ways to get to any card in your deck, but you usually have to go through, maybe one or several steps to get there, but just straight up take any card from your deck and add it to your hand. If that was in Yu-Gi-Oh! Just straight up like this card would be insane. Just for the record. Would they restrict this? So there's no ban list at this point. It is purely restrictions, correct?
Yes, and the Power 9 is restricted. And if you remember, the Time Walk, take an extra turn for 2 mana. Ancestral Recall, draw 3 cards for 1 mana.
Time Vault, which should have been on the list, which isn't for some unbeknown reason. Got it. Yep. I remember. But those are restricted, which means they are playable. So Demonic Tutor is basically any copy of the Power 9, which would effectively mean it is the Black Lotus, which is the best of that bunch, which immediately is sounding off alarm bells in my head, which should... It's hard for me to imagine a world where they would just let you have 4 Demonic Tutor to search, all the best cards in your deck, with one of them being, one of Magic's holy grails. But maybe they did. Maybe they did. Like, maybe the game was still, like... Because Yu-Gi-Oh! For context, before we had a ban list, also had a limited list. And I think it makes sense because they don't want to immediately ban these cards for this new game that people are excited to play, right? And that the game kind of has to marinate a little bit for those cards to actually eventually get banned. So there are cards that, it took a while for them to eventually, like, make their way onto the limitation list. And there are cards that Demonic Tutor is like reminding me of that I could see it. Now, one of the biggest differentiators here is that this isn't fully generic, right? This does require you to play black, which I guess you could say is a downside in quotes. So you have to at least have some sort of like black element to
we have a cost.
To play this.
There is a cost in our game.
I'm not used to that. I'm not used to everything's free in our game. Everything's free. May I ask a question?
Yes.
Are the dual lands legal?
Yes.
Okay. That definitely makes this a lot easier and more feasible to be able to play multicolored stuff. I feel like having 4 Demonic Tutor to get Black Lotus, which means you effectively have 5 copies of Black Lotus, seems insane. If I'm wrong, boy, that is a disaster. So I'm going to hope that this card was restricted, and that is my final answer.
Demonic Tutor on the creation of the restricted list is not restricted.
That's insane.
That's totally fine.
Insane. That is insane. Okay. All right. Sure.
So it
really?
Was... yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? That doesn't seem okay. That doesn't seem okay.
My mind is also blown. What is the point of a restricted list with Demonic Tutor legal at 4? I don't know.
Because you just get all the restricted cards. It defeats the whole purpose of the list.
I know. So let's start with a banger. Let's set the table for what were they smoking right off the top. It took them, by the way, 3 months. This was restricted in March.
Okay. So we're talking when the list was initially formed. So this did eventually get restricted. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I give myself partial credit for that.
Yeah,
it was restricted.
It literally only took them 2 months of playing with that restricted list to be like, oops. Yeah.
Boy, that must have been a time to play then. That must have been a time to play.
I mean, you want to try it sometime? I think it would be fun.
You know what? I mean, to be fair, old Magic seems like it's a lot more like Yu-Gi-Oh! So maybe.
Let's give you another card. Let's do it.
Sure. That's insane to me. That's wild. Dingus Egg. That's me. 4 mana for an artifact. Whenever anyone loses a land, that's a really weird way to word that. Dingus Egg does 2 damage to that player for each land lost. Okay. I need to clarify this. What does losing a land mean? Does that mean only from, like, that's in play, or does that even mean, like, if a land is discarded from the hand?
So an errated version of Dingus Egg, updated for modern standards, says whenever a land is put into a graveyard from play, Dingus Egg deals 2 damage to that land's controller.
Got it. So it is from play. That's what I assumed, but the way it's worded, you could argue that from hand or library in your case could also apply here.
This will not be the last piece of classic wording in today's video.
You've seen Yu-Gi-Oh cards with bad wording, so I mean, we're not immune to that. We just have a lot less text on our cards, or you have a lot less text on your cards. Anyway, I hate this. I already hate this.
Why?
Okay, when we're evaluating cards like from a band perspective, right? I feel like there's almost a threshold that we have to hold the cards to a standard too, whether it's like this, like some dumb combo enabler, or it's just so generically good that there's no reason that any deck wouldn't play it. I feel like there are kind of benchmarks, right, that we're looking for. When it's restricted, though, I feel like we're kind of working in this like much greater gray area where it's really good potentially, but maybe not good enough that it deserves to be banned. So like, I don't know. I feel like it's so much more difficult to evaluate just restricted versus banned. It's so
Let me help you. Is it on the power level of Black Lotus, which is its peer in the restricted category at this time? I'm sure that helps, right?
I mean, exactly, right? Well, and now the fact that you said Demonic Tutor wasn't already on there, and if you're gonna tell me fucking Dingus Egg was on there comparatively, I'm gonna be like, there's no shot that that's true. Like, there's no way. But you're gonna be like, yep, Dingus Egg was this crazy card, blah 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 blah, and I'm gonna just.
What?
I hate this. I hate this.
And you're gonna what?
This. The mind games. Like I said, at this point, you and I are at the stage where it's not even about the cards. It's about you and I just trying to get in each other's heads, and just how many layers in the mind gaming are ahead of one another are we? And the metagaming.
Would I pick a card that started with the word dingus just to get you on the
Yes,
thumbnail?
you would. Yes. Yes, you would. This card seems so bad.
Can you think of any reason to restrict it?
The only reason I could think is that if during this time I've learned that people very much hate when their lands are tinkered with, right? Because that's your resource. That's the no-go zone. Everything else in Magic is fine. Land destruction is taboo. My lands are sacred. Don't touch my lands, right? And so the only thing I could think of is if the reason this got restricted is that there's like some land destruction thing combo that like you just blow up all your opponent's lands, and then they take a bunch of damage, and there's like some way, and you can have like multiple of these Dingus Eggs, because now instead of 2 damage per land, it's 4 damage per land. And there's like some way that like all of a sudden you get rid of their 5 lands with like some card or multiple cards, and then that's it. And then they just die. And apparently that's too good for Magic when Black Lotus is legal. That seems like a pipe dream. I'm sorry. Like if you're gonna restrict this because of that, wow. And not Demonic Tutor, by the way. And not Demonic Tutor. Please tell me this wasn't restricted. I'm going to say it's not. If this is restricted, I give up. I just straight up, I'm going to give up this early in the video if this is restricted. Please don't tell me this is restricted. Final answer.
It's going to be a short video. Dingus Egg was restricted in the launch of the restricted list in January 1994.
Way.
It's true.
It's true. Why?
It's so true.
Why?
I wasn't there. I don't know. All we can do is look at the list that is posted from back in the day on the MTG fandom wiki and be like, what Magic were they playing? What were they doing that this was the problem? Do you remember your honorary Power 9 card, Armageddon?
Yes, that's kind of what was coming to mind. Yeah.
Is that what was going on? That they thought if they restricted the win con of a pure land destruction deck, if they just kept you to 1 Dingus Egg, that you would stop blowing up every freaking land? Because I will tell you something. When you blow up everybody's land, you can win with anything. It doesn't need to be a 4-mana do-nothing artifact. It can be a 2/2 creature will win the game in that scenario. And I will tell you right now, there are no land destruction cards on this list, and there are a ton of land destroying cards, a ton of them in this format. It's insane. It's insane. I couldn't believe it.
there's no way anyone can find someone who worked for them at the time to understand why Dingus Egg was on. Because now I just want to know. Now, like, genuinely, at this point, it's like one of Magic's, like, they could just make a documentary, like the mysteries of Magic, the Dingus Egg, right? I would watch that. Honestly, if someone puts that in a thumbnail, I'm clicking it. I'm just saying.
Let's do it. Let's go to MagicCon and just start like ghost hunting this shit. Let's just go to every designer and be like, who was there for that restricted list, and put Dingus Egg on it, and why? You know what? I'm gonna do it live. Fuck it. Let's do it live. Why was Dingus Egg restricted? MTG Google.
I should have just said it was, because I knew this was going to happen.
Google has the answer. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Dingus Egg was restricted in January 1994 for its combo with Armageddon. Period. That's it.
What combo? Wait, if you Armageddon them, you're probably going to win anyway.
And it even hurts you. It hurts both of you. Oh my God.
That's insane. That's actually
But Armageddon is fine. Armageddon is not the problem. Run 4, but you only get 1 Dingus Egg.
Well, at least you have 4 demonic tutors to get to your Dingus Egg combo, so there's that at least, right?
Unbelievable. I love this.
Insane.
This is so stupid. I love this so much.
Give me prices again. I'm going back to the price video.
No, man. No, you got to do this. You are committed to this video.
I'm locking in.
Let's go. Here's another one for you.
What the hell is that? Gauntlet of Might. Oh, I see it. Okay, I get it. It's
Thanos. It's fine.
I thought it was a snail at first. I'm not going to lie to you. 4 mana. All red creatures gain +1/+1, and all mountains provide an extra red mana when tapped. Okay. At least, like, I'm just saying this. This isn't my answer, but I'm saying at least if this is restricted, I can see the reason it's restricted. Giving all of your red mana sources the ability to tap for extra red, mountains specifically, sorry. All your mountains the ability to tap for double red. Like in early Magic, sure, like maybe that's actually something that could get out of hand but I have to compare everything to Dingus Egg now, evidently. So like anything's on the table at this point. Can you answer me this? Are the dual lands technically considered mountains as well?
The ones that tap for red mana are technically considered mountains.
Okay, so those would still tap for double in that case. All right. Just needed to clarify that, because I feel like that is relevant, considering those are like the best lands that everyone would try to play at this point. I'm trying to put myself now in the mindset of a Wizards creator of a restricted list during this time that wants to put Dingus Egg on the restricted list. And if they think the Armageddon combo with Dingus Egg is worth restricting a card, do they think this is worth restricting for a similar reason? There is a world where you could use your 4 demonic tutors to get a Black Lotus and then go turn 1, land Black Lotus, Gauntlet of Might, and now for the rest of the game, all of your stuff is just, if you're playing red, is just double red, and then you just completely just ramp away from your opponent, because I'm not really sure like what other ramp stuff exists at this point, which is more like a green thing anyway.
I do want to share, it's all red creatures and all mountains, not just yours.
Oh, so it's your opponents as well. Well, that only matters if you're playing against an opponent who's playing mountains, though, right? Which I guess if everyone's playing dual lands isn't like out of the realm of possibility. So that makes it slightly worse. But if your opponent's not playing any of that, then that doesn't necessarily matter. And this could be an argument for a restricted card. I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! Does this a lot now, where there's a lot of cards that are for specific decks/archetypes, and then they will restrict one of the best cards in that deck or archetype, so the deck is still playable, it's just the power sort of reined in, right? And so now you're not, like, doing a bunch of that stuff. But, like, do you really care, I guess, about playing multiple copies of Gauntlet of Might at the end of the day? It is extra, so if you get multiple gauntlets in, there is a world, theoretically, where you could... then everything's going for like triple red, and then it gets like really out of hand. But at that point, you're limited by how many cards you have.
It doesn't. Yeah, I guess it's triple. Like if you have 2 of them, but it doesn't increase exponentially if you have 3 gauntlets of might. Like it doesn't tap for quad. Yeah, it's just one extra per gauntlet of might. Yep.
But if you're going against an opponent who's only playing a land a turn, that's still a huge swing.
And they're dumb enough not to play mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My whole just perception is warped. You really started with the 2 best ones for this. I got to hand it to you.
Thank you.
I'm going to say no. My gut's telling me no, but which means for the purposes of this video, I probably need to say the inverse of what my gut says. But I'll stick with my gut. I'll say no. I'll die on the hill. Final answer. Not restricted.
Gauntlet of Might was restricted on the initial release.
I should have said it.
Something about 4 mana artifacts, dude. What's going on?
Should have said it. I was talking myself into it. I was talking myself into it too.
So Google says Gauntlet of Might was restricted from January 1994 to May 1994. So it came off the list pretty quickly, but it was restricted for providing powerful non-symmetrical mana acceleration.
Right.
The thing that, like, when I try to theory craft this, because that's all I can do. Until I hunt Magicon Vegas and corner them in a back room with a microphone, I won't know why. But I think of like the dual lands being legal at the time and them being rare, right? So if Gauntlet of Might's in your format and a common part of your format, you shouldn't run swamps. You should run Badlands, like as many as you can get your hands on, up to the 4-part restriction. So if you run a mono green deck, you should run Bayou, not Bayou. What is it? Taiga. You should run Taiga because you might run into somebody playing Gauntlet of Might. Now, the thing that drives me crazy is restricting it doesn't fix that.
No,
we're magic nerds. We have to optimize for every little possibility. The fact that Unfinity introduced that you could carry around a sticker sheet to use certain cards. There are players right now playing Commander that bring sticker sheets everywhere and have never played an Unfinity card because they are like scared they'll play against somebody's Unfinity card and make a copy of it or use a steal effect to borrow it, like stuff like that. Like the Magic players are insane. And so, you're right. I see the case with Gauntlet of Might, but it doesn't solve it.
I see, exactly. Like the problem still persists, which is why I think that's why I came to the conclusion that I did, is that it's still, the problem's still there. You just, and again, with like, demonic tutors and stuff, granted you have to play black for that. Like it's still there. It doesn't fix the problem restricting it, but it just makes it like way less consistent. At least it has a better defensible argument for being restricted than Dingus Egg. I'll give it that.
All right. I'm sure it'll get easier.
I'm sure. I'm sure. We're off to a 0-3. We're already out of the tournament, buddy. We can pack it up and go get lunch. We're on pizza duty.
But we're understanding, right? We're gaining understanding.
Are we?
Are we?
Are we actually? All right. What was this? Orcish Oriflamme? Oriflamme? 3 and a red. Oh, great. It's 4 mana. And it's an enchantment, but it's not an artifact. When attacking, all of your creatures gain +1/+0. That's it. I hate you. I Okay. All right. There's no way. I could just see you over there, like just with your fingers, just scheming, like I'm gonna pick these cards. I'm gonna pick these cards. And you're going through the process yourself. You're going through the process yourself of like, if I were him, I would look at this card and think this card's bad, so there's no way it's restricted, which is why I picked it for this video. But now that we're at this point in the video, maybe you anticipated that I thought that, so now everything's just out the window.
I could get away with anything in this video. Isn't it great?
You can't. You have.
But you know what? You know what? That's not fair. Let me reveal the version that was misprinted in alpha and see if that changes your mind.
Oh, how kind of you. Giving me more information to work with. When attacking, all of your attacking creatures gain +1/+0. This is literally the same. Oh, it's 2 mana. I was about to say, I'm like, what's different here?
Yep.
Okay. But this card was the fixed mana cost version of this card. I guess what were people playing with, or is that like kind of the gotcha here?
So again, it's very hard to speak for like back then, but by print run, the version on top was printed almost 10 times more than the version that at 2 mana, the alpha version. You are looking at the alpha version, which was in theory a misprint.
Sure, in theory. But like this is also at a time where no one was taking this game seriously, right? And people are just kind of just playing to have fun, good time, all that stuff. So this could be one of those situations where, do you remember when we did that one video and I showed you that card question? That's what this is reminding me of, where it's like, did they restrict this because there's this like misprinted version of the card that people are playing with out there, and they thought the misprinted version was too good, so it's on there, even though they don't care about the new version that's like in much more abundant quantity that's being circulated? Or do both of these suck? Or do both of these suck?
But I mean, that's part of the fun of the evaluation. The other part is, does restricting fix that? Does restricting fix that? Like,
right. Because like at 4 mana for that effect, that seems bad. For 2 mana, it still seems bad, but it at least seems like more defensible, I guess.
I think I showed you Bad Moon. There were cards back then. There's a 2 white enchantment that gives all white creatures +1/+1. Bad Moon gives all black creatures +1/+1 for 2 mana as an enchantment.
I'm going to say it wasn't restricted. And I can't wait to hear that I was correct about, well, actually, I mean, we're kind of just speculating here. I'm going to say it's not. Final answer.
You're finally starting to get how absolutely screwed you are. This was restricted.
I knew it.
Why? Oh my God.
Why?
I don't know. But what Google says, the power of AI bringing us this information.
Oh, yes. That's perfect.
In 1994... Wizards of the Coast restricted Orcish Aura Flame in Magic the Gathering due to perceived issues. Period.
That's it? Oh, okay.
And then the Google, that's the AI response. And then the Google Answers part says Orcish Aura Flame was restricted from 1994 January to February 1994. It
didn't last a month.
Because of the misprinted alpha version providing a powerful effect.
I'm right. Would you even play that for 2 mana? I don't even know.
When you see the other cards, no. No. Absolutely not. It's still not good enough. Without giving you insane meta context, it was so hard to have a good creature at this point that like an effect like this was barely useful. Like
that's insane. It's insane. It's insane. Like I this is incredible. At this point, I actually just want to see if I can get them all wrong. I think at that point, that's what I'm going for.
I would have erred on this being banned because they didn't want the confusion of this. Like, this is the only card that I know is that
that's
is
what
like
I would
this,
think.
right?
Right.
If they
that's
had
what
told
I would
me,
think.
if they had told me this is banned to avoid the confusion, I'd be like, that makes sense. But restricted just means you have to go get an alpha copy of which is, like I said, is been outprinted more than 10-1.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I can't imagine like going around at that time being like, oh, do you have this Orcish Aura Flame that's only 2 mana instead of 4? I really need it in my aggressive red.
Yeah, I don't know. And you get 1 Gauntlet of Might. Like, back in the day, they just shafted red decks. They were like, nope, we don't care one bit about you. We can't have games ending fast. We have to get the Dingus Egg out of here so that the Armageddon doesn't end the game so we can keep playing with no lands.
4 demonic tutors, by the way. 4 demonic tutors,
yeah, you can just tutor up your Orcish Aura Flame. What's
Insane.
the problem?
Insane.
Wow. I'm having a good time. Let's continue.
I bet you are.
I am. I'm having so much fun.
Island Sanctuary. It's a cool card. 1 and a white. It's an enchantment. You may decline to draw a card from your library during draw phase. In exchange, until start of your next turn. The only creatures that may attack you are those that fly or have Island Walk. What is Island Walk?
Island Walk is an ability. It's printed on the card. So each land has a type, right? The type of island. If a creature has Island Walk, when it attacks, if your opponent controls an island, the creature cannot be blocked.
Oh, interesting.
So for flavor reasons, picture like a merfolk has Island Walk. Since the opponent has an island, the merfolk swims past all the defenders, pops up and pokes them.
Right. Okay. That's kind of flavorful. I can see that being really annoying, though, for some reasons. Decline to draw a card. In exchange, will serve next turn that may attack. Are those that have flying or island? I like how it's fly. Oh, those that fly.
Yeah,
or have island.
Of course.
The wording is fun.
Those that are fly may assault.
This is an interesting effect. So I say that because this is actually the first time I feel like I could see this card on the restricted list, which means I'm wrong. So it's not restricted. But the reason I say that is because early on in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, there were cards, obviously not exactly like this, but there were cards that prevented your opponent from attacking with certain types of cards. And typically, more often than not, the ones that were the most commonly played at the time. And those cards did, in fact, get restricted. They didn't get banned, but certain control decks or just burn decks or just decks that wanted to play a slower game would play those cards. And so to prevent them from being too oppressive, they limited those cards down to a singular copy. And this actually reminds me of that a lot. For those of you who know Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm thinking of cards like Gravity Bind, Level Limit Area B, Swords of Revealing Light, things like that. And well, Swords just stops everything. But Gravity Bind and L-Lab are the two that are the most notable out of that bunch. I could actually see a world where this does get restricted because of that, especially if there is very little enchantment removal. And that was sort of kind of the thing too during this time, is that there wasn't a ton of ways to remove these like continuous types effects, which is why they were so good, which is why they limited them to one copy. Because the outs were few and further between, and it just like didn't really inspire the most fun gameplay, I guess. Well, depending on who you're asking, because you would love this card, I imagine.
No, I like drawing cards a lot. This is a tough ask.
That's actually one of the biggest differences, I will say, is that Gravity Bind and L-Lab don't have the decline to draw text on it. It would just be like, it would literally just say like, you can't be attacked by your opponent unless they have flying creatures or island walk creatures. And that's like, that would be the whole card, basically. There's no upkeep cost, nothing. So that's the reason I'm hesitant to say that this card got restricted, because you literally would need some sort of engine already in place to take advantage of the fact that you have to decline to draw every single turn to protect yourself from getting attacked. But I could also just see them restricting this anyway, because it's just a really annoying card to play against. And if they want to have people playing the game and enjoying the game, this could just be like a frustrating card to have at multiple copies. So I want to say it's restricted, but it probably isn't. So I should say it's not, and then I'm going to actually punch my monitor if it is. So I'm going to say it's restricted because of the Yu-Gi-Oh parallel there.
I see. Island Sanctuary. There was a card called Howling Mine in the original set, and it's a beloved card, especially in multiplayer formats. It's iconic. It's a very simple card. It's 2 mana for an artifact, and each player draws an additional card.
Oh. Okay.
Yep. Now, with Howling Mine and Island Sanctuary, from the very beginning, you were able to, if you got those 2 pieces, Howling Mine, you decline 1, you draw 1, and then your opponent proceeds to draw 2. And The only colors that could actually deal with an island sanctuary were green. They had an enchantment remover called Tranquility, and white. They had an enchantment remover called Disenchant, but it was very hard to do. So if the opponent was in those other colors, they might actually do nothing for the rest of the game. And I guess they thought that was fine because Island Sanctuary was never restricted or banned and never has been.
0-5, baby. Let's go. 0-5. Woohoo!
Orcish Oriflame attacking creatures getting buffed? No way.
Insane.
Island Sanctuary, no attack the rest of the game? Fine. Absolutely fine.
That's unbelievable. That's crazy. Like the Howling Mind combo, like you were going down that whole thing. I'm like, oh, this is great then. You get to I wouldn't even think that would work. In my mind, it would be like you wouldn't get to draw either card. But so the fact you would technically still get to draw and do that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Okay.
And that is what they were into.
We've learned a little bit about Yu-Gi-Oh! Too, that we actually did restrict cards like this. So it's funny that that's the case. But everything's free in our game, so maybe that actually makes a big difference.
I think it might help if I show you some of the like a creature from the time zone, so you really get a sense of how the creatures are doing at the time.
Okay.
Let's see if you think this one got restricted.
Plague Rats. Damn, that is some ugly artwork, but I like it. 2 and a black. Summon Rats. God, I love old cards. The X's below are the number of plague rats in play, counting both sides. That's a very interesting way to word that. Thus, if there are 2 plague rats in play, each has power and toughness 2/2. I like how they have to elaborate and explain that. That's funny. Okay, so you play this, it's a 1/1. And if you have a second one, it's a 2/2. If you have a third one, it's a 3/3. And if you have a fourth one, it's a 4/4. I hate this. Like, this card is so bad, and then you're gonna be like, "Yep, it's restricted," because they play well together. And imagine in 1993 having a card that you can play another one of it, and it gets bigger by 1/1, and that's like the best thing that you could be doing. Oh my god! You know what? I'm just gonna say that this card was restricted. I don't think it is. I think it sucks. I don't think it's good. But just to play your little game, I'm going to say it's restricted. Final answer.
That simple?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing either you're trying to metagame this or you're saying that the people making this list at some point were just sick of having both players have like 3 plague rats in play staring at each other.
Exactly. Hey, you have Demonic Tutor to get the rats. Think about it.
You do. You have an extra 4 rats in each deck.
Yeah,
if
it's
you
like
just
8,
tutor
that's like
them
8
up.
rats in your deck. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's very good.
Yeah.
It's very good. But also apparently fine honest gameplay, they did not restrict plague rats. No, hell no, this card's terrible. No.
Punished.
No, why would they do that?
Punished. I'm punished. But Dingus Egg, by the way. Dingus
Egg, shut it down.
The Dingus Egg.
Stop it. Shut it down. No more Dingus Egging, okay?
All right, we're 0 for 6. This is going well. This is at least, to be fair, at least my assumption was correct that this card's bad. But at this point, logic doesn't matter. Logic does not matter when we're dealing with the all powerful minds of old Magic design. Incredible.
Plague Rats was the first card that I ever thought was busted because there was a kid in my area who took it upon himself to collect every possible plague rat in the area. Of course, I could not beat that deck. Not in a million years. Because we didn't know you were limited to 4. In
that case, it's crazy.
The dude literally had a deck that was over 100 cards, and I think 40-some were plague rats.
Doesn't Magic have cards now that say like you can play any number of like a card?
Yes.
Like, on the yeah. Like this would be like a perfect candidate for that, right? For the old days.
I honestly, when I was trying to remember what Plague Rats did, I was hoping it had like you can play any number of this text because then it would look even more restrictable. But
it didn't need to because I got it wrong anyway.
All right, we roll on.
We roll on.
Eventually, see, this is what I say when I do these videos where it's just impossible to know what they were thinking. You just try to get there over time. You try to you try to get into their minds of what that meta, what that world was like from the people who made this list.
Oh, I've tried, and that's not going too well. All right. Oh, good. It's a 4-mana artifact. We know how well these go. Icy Manipulator. Mono artifact. I like this, like, tessellated, like, mosaic tile background here. 1 mana. You may tap any land, creature, or artifact in play on either side. No effects are generated by the target card. I'm assuming that's in case there was, like, some sort of, like, tap effect on something. That, like, it would, like, prevent that, or, like, it wouldn't generate a mana in the case of a land, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that is weird wording they wouldn't even use now. And I think in the updated version, it literally just says 1 tap target artifact, creature, or land. It doesn't even try to address that wording. I don't think they quite knew what it did.
I'm shocked, truly, that they didn't know. Man. This seems like it could be annoying, though, I will say. Well, annoying subjectively, right? It depends on who's using this card. If you're using this card, you're probably having the time of your life. If you're on the receiving end of this card, you're probably just wanting to scoop it up and go home.
I'll just admit to you that 14-year-old me had so much fun with this card.
Oh, I bet. From what I've learned about you, that does not surprise me. Also, this doesn't tap itself in order to do this. So as long as you have the mana to do it.
So I'm going to help you out. I'm not gonna let you accidentally go down that train. It's a mono artifact that would later be replaced by the tap symbol. But the characteristic of a mono artifact in its day was that you had to tap it for the effect.
Got it. Okay, so you do have to tap it. So you only get to do it once.
You do have to tap it.
But even so, I still think it's to be able to do that every single turn is still potentially pretty good. Because you're tapping down their best thing every turn to prevent them from attacking you. You're tapping down a land potentially if you want to, like, slow them down a bit. You're tapping an artifact to prevent them from using that artifact. I could see someone who was, designing the restricted list at this time being on the receiving end of this and being petty and being like, yeah, I hate this card. Let's restrict it.
Yeah, you're going to have to demonic tutor it if you want to use it, okay?
Well, because if you have multiple of this in play, then you're like icing multiple stuff down, right? Like you're stopping like 2 things. Like that, I feel like that could potentially get a lot worse, especially if you're really trying to control the game. Like, imagine there's a world where you have like these icy manipulators and like this island sanctuary, and you got your howling mine, and you got all these things, right? Everything's sort of coming together. You got the combo dream of not combo dream, the control player's dream of not letting your opponent do anything. I want to say this got restricted, but you're going to be like, yeah, this card's totally fine. But I'll say it's restricted. Final answer. Just be gentle.
I don't know how you're going to take this one, but I guess we'll find out. Because you're right.
Oh, finally!
You're on the board, baby.
Oh, 1 in 6.
Manipulator.
1 in 6.
I see. Okay, AI. We turned to AI on this Google. Icy Manipulator was restricted in Magic the Gathering because it was considered too versatile and good at stopping small creature attacks.
Small creature attack, not large creature attacks.
Not only obviously you tap the small ones. Yeah. The creature's ability to tap artifacts and land was considered a secondary trait, but it was still versatile. So I'm sure we'll get some comments and about how in old Magic, the way that cards were worded and templated with the mono artifact and continuous artifact framing was that if you tapped a continuous artifact, the effect didn't happen. So Howling Mine is a really good example of this. 2 mana artifact. Now it's just an artifact. Back in the day, a continuous artifact that says each player draws an additional card during each of their draw steps. Really fun card. If you tapped a continuous artifact with Icy Manipulator, if you tapped a Howling Mine with Icy Manipulator, the opponent did not get the extra card. It turned off the effect. But on your turn, on your turn, you untap, upkeep, then draw, so it would be turned
That's
on
crazy.
for your turn. So some of the comments are going to say that's why it was restricted. Google AI disagrees. But of course, Google AI was probably, to my knowledge, not there when the rules were written, when the ancient texts were designed.
AI cannot comprehend the depth of Magic the Gathering's creators and intentions.
But congrats, you are on the board.
All right, finally.
Yeah,
we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do.
Yes, we do.
At least, if this was not restricted, I would have just given up. Genuinely, this actually like seems quite good.
Here you go.
Balance. It's just straight up called balance, not balance of something, not just balance with this like crusader looking guy who looks pretty cool. 1 and a white for a sorcery. Whichever player has more lands in play must discard enough lands of his or her choice to equalize the number of lands both players have in play. Cards in hand and creatures in play must be equalized the same way. Creatures lost in this manner may not be regenerated. What does may not be regenerated mean?
Regenerated was an ability back in the day where you pay a cost and a death effect applying to your creature would not apply.
Interesting. Okay. Huh. That's kind of neat.
What do you think of the card? Yeah.
I don't want to give too much away, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a similar card to this, and that's kind of what it reminds me of. But it doesn't work exactly like this. It's distinctly different, but that's just like the vibe that it reminds me of. And people who are watching this who know Yu-Gi-Oh! Know what I'm thinking.
Because
I might show it to you.
Was it a good card?
I don't want to say whether or not it's good either, but people who are watching know what I'm thinking. People who know they know.
Discard is definitely bad templating. It would be called sacrifice today.
Yeah. No, that's not. I'm not concerned about that. What I'm concerned is how are we equalizing? So we're going down to the lowest number here.
Yes.
So if I have 2, you have 7, you have to go down to 2.
Yes, you do.
Okay. So does that also work with 0? So if I have 0 creatures and you have 6, you have to go down to 0.
That would be correct.
Okay. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Kind of a nasty combo with Dingus Egg under some of those.
Oh my god, stop. Just stop. Yeah. Who needs, and you have to think about it too. This is like more copies of Armageddon, right? When you look at it that way for your Dingus Egg combo. This is actually interesting. I think this is the most interesting card you've showed me. It's crazy that it affects the lands and the creatures and the cards in your hand. It just straight up affects everything. I'm trying to think of like the use cases for this. This card's terrible if you're ahead. It's awful if you're ahead. You would never really want to play this if you're ahead. It's really good if you're behind because it gives you a way to get back into the game potentially. But it's, and like at a neutral state, probably not good enough. At most, you might just like get a land or 2 off your opponent, get like a creature or 2 off your opponent. But it is basically a board wipe at the end of the day. I'm kind of just looking at it as it's like a 2-mana board wipe in most cases where you're on an empty field. And then you kind of just balance out the board. They go down to 0. If you have 0, and then you get to sort of like reestablish initiative. The problem with that is that if you have more cards in hand, like say your opponent committed a bunch of resources to the field, right? They summon a bunch of creatures. They're on like 2 cards in hand. And you have balance and let's say like 4 or 5, 6 other cards in hand. Well, that's great. You can balance the board down so that you board wipe them. But now you have to also discard half your hand because they only have a couple cards left in hand, which is balanced by the way this works. And you get to choose the card. So, I mean, you're keeping your best cards in that exchange anyway. So would you be okay with that?
This one's got you cooking.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to it that you have to, because I think it affects so many different areas. There's a lot to think about. The Yu-Gi-Oh equivalent that I'm thinking of isn't this. What's the word? It's not as like involved in this sense. It's like a simpler version of this, I would say. I could see them wanting to restrict this just because it could just be really annoying to like have to resolve this. And similar to, well, Armageddon's not restricted though, so not like that matters. I could just see this being like a frustrating card to play against, but that obviously hasn't been the reason they've restricted things, considering some cards haven't been restricted for that reason. I will go ahead and say that they did restrict this. Final answer.
That's your final answer?
That's my final answer.
They did restrict this.
Okay. I could have seen a case for either way.
April of 1995, but not in the initial restricted list. Sorry. Balance is absolutely cracked too. It's absolutely stupidly cracked. If you have this card and you just kind of slow play into it so that they sacrifice several lands and it wipes their board, who cares really if you dump their hand, because you still have probably some lands because you knew that balance was coming. Balance is absolutely stupid. It got restricted in standard, and in standard as a one of, it was horrible to play with because you always had to build so many things about your turn, about I am winning, this is the right play, but what if they have the balance? What if they draw the balance? It was even more tilting as a restricted card.
Yeah.
Than it was as a banned card. And it would eventually, it was on the initial banned list for Commander, the very first one, and never came off. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
if you resolve this in Commander, everyone's going to hate you. I can see that.
Oh yeah, and this card was just so game tilting and warping. It's hard to express how it was probably the best reason to play the color white back then. Like you got one balance.
Yeah. I can see it.
And I can't believe it took them a year to do something about it. Apparently, 4 of these were fine in whatever world needs Orcish Oriflame limited to 1 copy.
But this is fine.
This is fine.
We talk about it in Yu-Gi-Oh! All the time when you say how it was infuriating to play against the 1 copy of balance. It's like when it's at 4 in your case, or 3 for our game, you can build around it, right? You can anticipate that there's a high likelihood your opponent will draw into the card. But when there's just 1, then you just like got sacked, like just straight up.
Oops, darn. Good game.
It's like, you had the 1 balance. Great. Yay.
Yeah, that was a commonality at Pro Tours. It was we don't need to talk about that. Also, people are not going to be happy if I don't talk about balance in combination with another card that I might show you someday, but it allowed you to sacrifice all your lands for a benefit. So the timing play was to put balance on the stack and then sack all your lands.
Sure. That's hilarious.
We did really nasty things to each other.
It seems like it, like Dingus Egg.
You know what? No regrets on that one.
Berserk. This is some art. 1 green. It's an instant. Until end of turn, target creature's current power doubles and it gains trample. If it attacks, target creature is destroyed at the end of turn. The spell cannot be cast after current turn's attack is completed. So you can't use it in like main phase 2, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know why you would, but sure.
Well, because it can target any creature, not just yours.
Fair point. Because otherwise it would just be like free removal at that point. Not free, sorry. This isn't the game of free things.
Very cheap removal. Very cheap removal.
Very cheap removal. Yeah. I mean, it's still potentially very cheap removal. It's just this one's a lot simpler.
Do you think it's good?
I think because you could theoretically use it for removal, it is good. Now let me ask this. Your opponent goes to attack. They declare their attackers. Can you like respond with Berserk to pump their thing at that point, and then it would destroy it at the end of the turn?
Yes.
Okay. It does give it trample, though. Although, to be fair, you get to pick blockers in this game. So you could just choose to not block and just take a lot of damage. And, well, I guess a lot in quotes, because it depends what you're using this on. If it's something that's small, if you're doubling something's power from, 2 to 4, it's a 1 mana green. It's a green mana card that's like lose some life to destroy something at instant speed. I don't think that's like the end of the world, which also flexes as the ability for you to pump up your own thing to get in for a lot of damage. Let me ask the reverse now. If you go attack with thing, your opponent doesn't choose to block, can you then berserk after they choose not to block you?
Yes.
Okay. That was a timing thing. I wasn't sure how that would work.
So there is a phase where you can cast the Berserk before the blockers, and there's another phase where you can cast the Berserk after the blockers.
Okay. If this was in Yu-Gi-Oh, it would actually work very similarly to that there is like multiple windows like that, just because of the way this card works. So I just wasn't sure if it worked the same. So I just had to clarify. And we don't have blockers, so that also makes a big difference. It's a neat card. I think it is flexible that you could use it just to like get a lot of damage in, or to like ensure you win in combat, or to, if you need to. I don't think it was used as removal, like for like just using it on their stuff, but if you absolutely had to, I guess you could. I think it's a lot more effective if you use it in tandem with your own creature. But like you could possibly like win the game out of nowhere if your opponent like isn't ready for it. Like you go, say you're on like 6 life and you attack with a 3 power thing and they don't block, and then you berserk it, you just win the game that way.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. If they maybe they do block and then you berserk it, and then like the trample damage kills them potentially, like that could be okay, because like, you know, but it's like a combat trick at the end of the day.
Yep. Imagine if you both have 4 Plague Rats.
Oh, it's crazy.
It's
wild.
It's insane.
Oh my god.
Imagine if you have an Orchishora Flame too.
The biggest rats you've ever seen. The berserk rats. Not even just any rats. They're berserk rats. So this is interesting because there are cards similar to this in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I would argue are way worse than this, that actually have... They've seen play. I don't know necessarily that they were restricted, but these types of cards that I'm thinking of came out later in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, like several years later when they were good. For people who are watching, I'm thinking of like Shrink, for instance, like just things like that.
It sounds like the opposite.
It's the opposite, but conceptually, like how you would use it, all the applications are like the same. That is why I'm thinking of it that way. This is hard. I think it's hard to evaluate because I also don't know like how ubiquitous just like good removal is, like good cheap removal is during this time, because like maybe this is like
sure
primo for back then.
I'll tell you straight up, green just doesn't kill creatures. It just doesn't outside of this.
Outside of like combat or like beating other creatures, right?
Right.
With their creatures.
And like you can't attack someone's creature directly in Magic, so...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They have to like opt to block it.
Yeah. Green having an effect to destroy an opposing creature just never happened. There was good removal in other colors. There is a 1 white removal that exiles any creature. That's really good. There's a 1 black and 1 other, so 2 mana black removal that destroys almost anything that's not black. That's really good. But like that gives you some baseline for removal in other colors. Okay. And green has nothing like this.
And I guess it's like they want to have reasons for people to play the certain colors at the end of the day, right? And maybe they just, green has to have something. And so this is like its form of removal to make sure it always wins in combat, even though it kills the thing at the end of it, which is debatable. There's also, I mean, there have been like other effects like this, I think, just like generally where like sometimes if you win the game with an effect like this, it doesn't matter that it destroys the monster, right?
Yes.
I want to say this wasn't restricted, but I feel like this is going to be an example where I think it's not restricted and you're going to say it is. But my gut tells me it shouldn't be. So I will say it's not. Final answer.
One more shot. What about 2 Berserks?
Oh, because you can double it again?
You still going to stick with it?
I think that's fine. I am going to stick with it. I think if you're going to waste the resources, both mana and cards to do that, to go all in like that, I think that's fine.
I think modern, current year Magic players would agree with you, but in 1994, Berserk was restricted in the initial restricted list and remained restricted in that what would go on to be like the vintage format for a very long time. Berserk has now been unrestricted in April of 2000. It was unrestricted in April 2003. So it actually stayed on the list for a long time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. They were very afraid of Berserk on Berserk. Berserk plus Fork. Fork is a red instant that copies another target spell. Also made it possible to set up Berserk kills. Of course, you get 4 demonic tutors. So basically, Berserk was restricted for actually ending games. And I don't know if you can tell here, they didn't want games to ever end. They just wanted to sit there for 2 or 3 hours, blowing up each other's lands. I don't know, man.
There's a card. Another card I was thinking of is it's a card called Megamorph. It's a enchantment aura in Magic terms, and it doubles the attack of whatever it's equipped to. But then if your life points are lower than your opponent's, so that card got restricted, and that's like I was thinking like maybe, but like so if we had quick play Megamorph and Megamorph was restricted, I guess I could see it, but. The fact Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything's free, right? So I think that's like what sort of also is affecting my judgment on something like that. Where this, you'd have to pay for the big thing, wait a turn, then play a Berserk on a big thing, and then play like if you even wanted to do a second Berserk on top of that. I don't know. I guess I could see it. It's just like that's just like a testament to how different our games are, I feel like.
And also really interesting that happened over time was the timing rules. So as Magic evolved, the rules got refined, of course. And there is now a phase at the end of combat. It's the after damage phase, but it's still inside combat. So what you can do is take damage and then cast Berserk after the damage, and their thing will still die.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's really weird. So you don't take double damage, but you get the 1 mana removal. And
that makes it way better.
Yeah, but it's still it wasn't played that way back in the day, but it was restricted back then, and it's fine now. Also, this card is fun in Commander because, you know, your friend attacks your other friend with the big monster. You berserk it, you kill one of them, and then their big monster dies.
That's funny. That's really funny.
It's probably one of the best green cards in Commander that not many people play because it doesn't have a lot of printings. It's a very old card.
Yeah, looks like it. Neat card, though.
One more shot.
Okay.
Just one more. Let's see if we can
one
put
shot
it
at redemption.
All together.
One shot at redemption.
Yeah. What have we learned?
Mana Barbs. 3 and a red for an enchantment. We love these. Whenever any land is tapped, Mana Barbs does 1 damage to the land's controller. Ew. Ugh.
Sound fun?
Not particularly, but so if we're going off the thesis that they want games to never end, that this card should be restricted for that reason, because this card makes games end very quickly, because people like playing things and people like tapping their lands to play things, because that's how this works, because you guys have a resource system that requires it, unlike our game. So immediately right off the bat, I want to say it's restricted for that reason, unless the whole premise of this video was to lead me into that line of thinking. And then it's just, they throw it all out the window for this one exact card, which is probably the case. But are you going to pay 4 mana for this?
Like a dingus egg?
Like a dingus egg.
Don't be a dingus.
To be fair, I think this is better than dingus egg, at least.
Oh, no. Then they better restrict it.
Yeah. Oh, that's annoying. Oh, that's kind of cute. You could Icy Manipulator tap their land, and then they take damage.
You found it. Funny. You found the win con. You found,
how
the combo. Games will end.
I found the combo.
Finally, we got there.
I want to say that this is not restricted, but like I said, everything with this video I've learned. They want people to play the game. They never want the game to end. You will play Magic forever. You have sold your soul to this company, and you will play with the cardboard crack until the end of time. So I think because of that, I'm going to say they restricted this because they want the games to go on forever. And that's my logic. I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be restricted, but I'm going to say it is. Final answer. Just straight up.
Now, come on. Come on now.
Don't do this to
Come
me.
on now. With Mana Barbs, it's not like you have to tap your lands. You can just do nothing instead.
You can just not play the game. All fun.
It doesn't have to end. So I think since they really liked staring at each other, they were fine with not restricting Mana Barbs and leaving it unrestricted. Mana Barbs has never been and probably never will be restricted. They were totally done.
I'm done.
They were good with it. They were good with it.
I knew it. It was all a ploy from the very beginning to bait me on the very end as well. Well, this was fun. This was great. I went 1 in 10. Fantastic. You got me. You know, I knew you didn't think you were going to be able to outdo yourself since the pricing video. You did a damn good job, CGB. You got just you wait till we film next time. I'm going to cook something up for you. You are toast. You are toast.